Hello, Young Living family. It's a great honor to be speaking with you today. As most of you know, this is my first Young Living convention. I would prefer to be meeting in person because I really do wish that I could get to shake all of your hands and get to know you. I'm guessing that most of you would also prefer to join us in Utah and visit our Mona farm. However, there are some advantages to a virtual convention. Right now, there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world watching this, and all of this content has been translated into 6 languages, which really is a miracle of modern technology. But even more amazing than the technology that allows us to stay connected is the thing that actually brings us together. The almost magical essential oils that Young Living ships all over the world in little amber glass bottles. Normally, my favorite oils are frankincense, Palo Santo, and lavender. But today, for some strange reason, I decided to carry a bottle of peace and calming with me. I hope that all of you are relaxing in the aroma of your favorite oil right now. I think that only a small fraction of you know anything about me, so I hope it's okay if I take just a minute to introduce myself. I'm an attorney by training and was previously a partner at a large international law firm. Earlier in my career, I was the 3rd highest ranking official at the United States Environmental Protection Agency, appointed by Ronald Reagan and confirmed by the United States Senate. While at EPA, I was primarily responsible for finally getting lead out of gasoline. For years, I was also the CEO of a steel company that was traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Later, I became the editor of a large daily newspaper in Salt Lake City, Utah. More recently, I served for several years as CEO of a nonprofit foundation focused on energy policy. However, the accomplishment that I am most proud of is the wonderful family that my wife Jan and I have created together. Jan and I have been married for 47 years, and together we have 7 children and 23 grandchildren. So, you're probably wondering how a lawyer with no background in direct sales ended up as president of Young Living. Through a strange series of events, my resume ended up in Mary's email box. So you can imagine my shock when I received a call from her asking if I would be interested in helping Young Living. I said, of course I would, and that led to an invitation to meet with her at her home. That was about 10 months ago. I didn't know much about Mary or Young Living, other than that she and Gary had built a wonderful company. As I met with Mary in her home, I became captivated by her vision and passion for Young Living's mission to bring the benefits of essential oils to humanity. So, as crazy as that sounds, that was how my journey with Young Living began. I met with Mary on a Thursday evening, and the following Monday was my first day on the job. These past 10 months, which by the way have felt like 10 years, have been exciting, and I've learned all sorts of new things, like Young Living owns a number of distilleries all around the world, but we don't produce a single drop of alcohol. My vocabulary has expanded with words like helichrysum and acronyms like HPLC, or High Performance Liquid Chromatography. And then there's the added complexity of the compensation plan with words like PV, Unilevel, and OGV. Needless to say, there has been a lot to take in, but I am thrilled to be part of the Young Living family. At the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that essential oils are what has brought us together, but it is very clear to me that we wouldn't have the oils at all if it weren't for Gary Young, the pioneer of the essential oil movement. I know many of you feel a special connection to Gary, even if you've never had a chance to meet him, and sadly, I never had that chance. Gary had a dream that someday Young Living would be bigger than Amway. And when he first voiced that goal to Mary, she thought it was completely crazy. Now, decades later, Young Living is among the top 10 largest direct selling companies in the world, and Amway is within our sights. And by the way, we're now tied for number 7. Nu Skin is 6th, just barely ahead of us. As president of Young Living, I feel an enormous responsibility to guide Young Living in a way that Gary's legacy will be realized, which is to provide the highest quality essential oils to the world, as well as his mission to take those oils into every home. It is clear to me that we must continue to embrace Gary's vision and legacy. Gary's vision is indispensable to the continued growth of Young Living. We must capture and perpetuate his vision. For example, we must continue to ensure that the farms and farm experiences are central to our story. This past year has been an exciting one for the Young Living family. The good news is that Young Living's near miraculous growth that all of you have generated is astonishing. The not so good news is that some of our business systems have struggled to keep up with that growth. We are blessed to be where we are today. However, if we are going to fulfill Gary and Mary's vision of getting oils into every home, we must upgrade some of those systems. One of my principal goals is to ensure that we have the platforms and personnel in place to sustain continued growth. Mary and I feel that we have assembled an extraordinary executive leadership team to accomplish these objectives and goals. Young Living has had some pretty impressive achievements this past year. To start off, we have paid over 4 million checks to roughly 500,000 members over the course of 2020. That's hundreds of thousands of members who have benefited from Young Living's business opportunity. An astonishing number of you have achieved new ranks over this past year. The number of stars has grown by 258%. The number of senior stars has increased 300%, and the number of executives has increased 337%. That's amazing. And we've also been very active in our communities. For example, this year we donated over 178,000 items to local shelters, police and fire stations, and food banks. This included such products as baby wipes, essential oils, hand sanitizer, wolfberry bars, einkorn flour, Ningxia Red, and more. We've also served our local community by planting trees and cleaning up litter along the highway on Earth Day. Earlier this year, many of our employees, along with some members, participated in a foundation project called Flipping for Freedom. The foundation purchased, renovated, and sold a house, and the profits from the sale went toward the fight against human trafficking. We're also excited to announce that Utah Valley University recently broke ground on the Young Living Alumni Center. How cool is it to have a permanent memorial to Gary and Mary's vision on the campus of the largest university in Utah? The pandemic and resulting travel restrictions have made meeting with all of you in person nearly impossible. However, in April, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet with almost 30 diamonds in Mexico. Astonishingly, just a few years ago, there were no diamonds in Latin America, but now there are 29, including 3 Royal Crown diamonds. The thing that struck me the most was their energy, passion, and stories. I knew that Young Living members were filled with passion, but spending time with diamond leaders in Mexico solidified my understanding of your passion and conviction. I hope to meet with many more of you around the world in the coming months. Because our convention theme is Rise Above, I thought it would be nice to share a story from my youth that goes along with our theme. Even though the story is about me, it has been an inspiration to me many times throughout my life and helped me to rise above challenges. In 1964, my father decided that he would take me and my two younger brothers to the World's Fair in New York City. But two major problems stood in our way. We didn't have much money, and we lived 3,000 miles away on the other side of the country in Los Angeles, California. So my dad came up with the insane idea that we would ride our bicycles all the way to New York. At the time, I was 14, and my two younger brothers were 12 and 13 years old. My dad had never been on a bicycle before, but my brothers and I at least had paper routes. Now, some of you younger people listening might not know what a paper route is, but there used to be these things called newspapers, which were delivered to your house by kids on bicycles. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we didn't train prior to setting off on this bike trip. We just started. After we left Los Angeles, the first major obstacle in our way was the Mojave Desert. It was July, scorching hot, and getting through the desert was unbelievably uncomfortable and difficult. To help give you context for what the Mojave Desert is like, Death Valley is not far from the route we took. After crossing the desert, then we had to get over the mountains that stood between us and Las Vegas. Riding up that mountain pass was difficult, but once we reached the top, we were able to coast down almost all the way to Las Vegas. Did I mention that it was really hot? We were thirsty all the time. My dad often said, especially during the beginning of our ride, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I can still remember that we survived the nearly 300-mile section to Las Vegas by eating Baby Ruth candy bars. By the time we got to St. George, Utah, we were stronger, which was a good thing because we then had to get over the Rocky Mountains and cross the Continental Divide, which was the hardest part. But after we got over the mountains and reached the Great Plains, we were strong enough to ride more than 100 miles a day. A few weeks later, we finally made our way into New York City, and we had a good time at the World's Fair. We often slept on the side of the road. All we had were surplus Army blankets. However, I also remember the many times we were blessed by the kindness of strangers who invited us to sleep in their homes, barns, and yards. It would be difficult to overstate how formative an experience this bike ride was for me. It allowed me to experience the diversity of America's people, culture, and landscape. I also learned that I could do hard things and learned that challenges were easier to face when surrounded by people who I love and who love me. Even though the bike ride was my personal experience, I'm sure that all of you can relate to it because each of us is on our own journey through this life, which is filled with obstacles that must be overcome. We all start off weak, and we become stronger because of our challenges. Sometimes we choose those challenges, and sometimes they are chosen for us. There is no training regimen to prepare us for life's journey. There is just life. We are all training on the way. The only thing that we have to decide is whether or not we will rise above our challenges to reach greater heights. Sometimes we will be helping others, and sometimes we will be the recipients of help. Just like when I was riding my bicycle across the country, the kindness, generosity, and warmth of the people we meet along the way may astonish us and may be the thing that makes the whole journey worthwhile. Thank you for the warm reception I felt when joining the Young Living family. Let's have a great convention and a great year. I hope to see you all in person soon. Thanks.